Filip.
Hi.
Okay, so can I get you to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Filip.
Yeah, speak into the microphone.
Sorry. My name is Filip Dahlgren. I have lived in Singapore probably for close to 25 years now, off and on. Me and my brother, especially my brother, but me too, brought floorball from Sweden here in 1994. And we managed to convince some players. It's actually an interesting story, but we had this. We saw some roller hockey guys that were playing roller hockey with an ice hockey stick outside of NUS, and my brother went over there and tried to introduce. Look at this sport. This is really cool. And there's a world championship coming up in 1996, and this was, I think, 94. And their question was, oh, okay, is it with skates, as in rollerblades? And we kind of said that, sure. I mean, it might be, but you can try it out with skates. And they did that for a few trainings, and then we kind of tried to introduce that. How about you try it without, just to run, because of the stick, it's kind of short when you have skates on. And that's kind of how we managed to get our first team together that actually played in the 1996 World Championship. And at that time I was playing ice hockey in Sweden, and Stefan was living in Singapore. My brother Stefan Dahlgren. And then so I was his assistant, if you will. And we went over to Sweden. I think a lot of the players had only played for 6 to 8 months, and we were hoping that they would have an easy first game, and they put us against Finland in the first game. Yeah, so probably not the easiest game, of course, but a fun story about that is that there's a lot of legendary legends down here that played on that team, and we had the Swedish team walk by us in the evening before our first game against Finland, and they realized that none of our sticks were curved, so they were kind of the blade. It was straight. So we have these really funny photos of the Swedish team actually coming down with a heating gun or a heater or something, and they were trying to help curve the blades of the Singaporeans. So it's kind of like, wow, that happened. And Sweden, of course, won that World Championship. So I think all the Singaporeans were, at that time, they were supporting Sweden. I'm not sure now, it's maybe like 50-50 when they play Finland. Mm-hmm. But so that's kind of how it started. And we were very fortunate that we had a lot of teachers or soon-to-be teachers on that first team. They were studying NIE. So when we tried to push the sport into the schools, they got sent to different schools, and they were pushing it from the inside as well. And as you know probably, and everyone else, is the beauty of this sport and this game is that you don't have to explain or try to convince people that it's a fun-paced sport. Actually, you just have to play it or watch it, and you realize it. So by doing that, we got into the schools at an early age, and that's how. I mean, there are many other reasons too, of course, but that's one of the main reasons I think that it became so successful in schools. And you have a lot of Asian countries as well as in Australia that are trying to do the same thing, but it has not been as successful as we have when it comes to school sports. So that's that way, and then of course. We managed to get it into SEA Games. My brother actually had to go to Myanmar because at that time we were trying to push it into becoming a SEA Games sport, and it had to be an exhibition sport first. And we needed 4 teams, and we only had 3. So Stefan went over there and coached them, and that's another story in itself, how Myanmar back then. But and we managed to play there. I believe it was the SEA Games before the Singaporean SEA Games, and then it became an official sport. And Singapore, of course, hosted it at ITE and won gold. And that's, I think, the last. Yeah, I think that's the last time Singapore won gold in SEA Games on the men's side.
On the men's side, yeah.
Women's side, they win, of course. And then after that, it's been, if you look at the development in Singapore, it's organic, you know. Nothing can stop it. It's just getting more and more popular, which is amazing to see. And it's so popular among girls too, which sometimes can be really hard for sports to get that part. But floorball has managed to get almost 50-50, which is amazing, you know, when you look at it. And I think it's growing I might be wrong here, but in the league too. I know that we have more leagues, more divisions on the men's side, but on the girls' side, it's also growing, which is great. So that's kind of the way if you look at the background regarding SG Open. It was we did the SG Open. We started 2017. We did a Bali floorball Open before that because we had this idea that to try to get Europeans to be interested in the tournament, we had to have it at like some exotic beach place. So Bali became the choice. Again, I'm going to make the story as short as possible, but that was a logistic nightmare, of course, to have it there. In everything from having to try to convince police to not close down the event, which happened 3 times a day, where you have to, they had a chance to actually earn a few bucks, if you understand what I mean.
I get what you mean. All right.
So it was from everything, it was just a nightmare. And the interesting thing was that when we actually had Pixpo that came for that. And a lot of, especially youngsters, they don't know about this, right? But they came back. We wanted to have a survey from them, you know, what we could do better, et cetera, and we realized that I think it was almost 100% said that, why did you put it in Bali? Why not have it in Singapore? Singapore is amazing. You know, they were really, really pushing Singapore because they said, you know, everything works. It's very, you know, clean, etc. And we realized, oh my God, we have looked at this the wrong way. We thought we needed that exotic beach, and they were perfectly happy with Sentosa Beach. Maybe not right now at this moment, but due to that. But normally they love Sentosa. And I mean, Sentosa today compared to 10, 15 years ago is night and day, of course. So, yeah. So we started SG Floorball Open 2017. We branched out, and I think we had a few Malaysian teams and some other team. And then 2018, we started pushing it even more and got more international teams. We started getting support, and we made a collaboration with STB, and they were super happy about getting all these international teams. And then more or less it was going in the right direction until COVID hit, and then we had 2 years of no SG Open. We did actually have SG Open virtual, which you can go back and see, but which was really, really cool actually. We focused a little bit more on players and what was happening in Sweden, because Sweden was not so shut down at that time. So we went that way, and then we came back 23 and 2024 now, and we are breaking all records here, and we are by far the largest tournament in Asia. And that was kind of our idea, because we wanted to, me coming from a coaching background, I coached Singapore for a very long time, both ladies, but especially the guys. But I looked at it that I saw that what we actually needed, I saw the talent, but I also saw that in schools, you if you're unlucky, you might be out of a tournament after 3-4 games, and then you have to wait 1 more year for games again. There are no other games, and based on my background and my experience in playing in sports in Sweden, that was the main difference, because Swedish kids, it's not through school, so it's different. It's on clubs, and parents help out a lot, but they go on, they probably have at least 40-50 games a year. And the interesting thing as a coach, from a coach, and I know most coaches probably, I hope they agree with me, is that you can train something as much as you want, but it's never going to be the same as actually playing a game. And you learn so much as players in games. So we really felt like we need to get Singaporeans to get more, and not just Singaporeans, Asians in general, to get more games against each other, but also against perhaps teams that are on a little bit of a higher level. And that has gone into now 2024, where we're trying to even get the youth to get more chances, because we realize that when you are 25, 30, you know, it's kind of like an old dog. You can't really teach it to sit anymore. I'm not calling everyone a dog, but we realize that probably a 17-year-old or a 19-year-old will probably benefit more from playing against really top elite players than perhaps someone that is on the downside already. And that was our target with this, to get more youth involved. And we have a lot of local youth that is, of course, participating in SG Open, and we have all the national teams in Singapore, which is great. We have the support from SFA, STB, and we have Thailand here. We have India here.
Yeah.
We have, of course, Malaysia. We have Japan. We have these teams that it's not just for Singaporeans, of course, but it's always good since we are based here, and I'm almost like half Singaporean now. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah. So, it's. I mean, this is actually a good in-between break for the league, because we have the first half of the league, and then this is the part where they do get the chance to go and try and play against the regional opponents. And
sure.
So how many teams do we have for this particular edition?
So total teams is 100, 99 or 100, I think. Yeah. So we have 99 teams, I believe, and we have 42 international teams.
40. That is a lot of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In different categories, yes.
So how do you manage to get all these teams together to come together and play?
Well, I mean, we have to do a lot of work, of course. I think now the tournament has been around for quite some time, so it's a very interesting tournament for not just Singaporeans, of course, but also for the Europeans. They look at this. I mean, everyone knows how beautiful Singapore is, and now you can add this in, and parents come also because they realize that kids love floorball. They can let them have their part while they go shopping or they do other things. So it's kind of like you're opening up for everyone, which was our idea from the beginning. But it's a lot of work. We do a lot of work talking to teams, trying to convince them, and most teams want to come. It's just about the budget, financial restraints, and also because of COVID. Due to COVID, if we go back again, rewind 2019, we were actually planning to host it at a bigger venue than this. But due to COVID, it kind of had to. Yeah. We had to put that on hold, and the first year we had some hesitation from some teams, which I understand, because you had COVID, you had people still not sure if you could travel. You still had the curfew, if you remember, and I mean, if you go from Europe to Singapore and then you have to be home at your hotel at 10 p.m. I mean, that's probably not the greatest way. So we felt like 23 we had a lot of teams, and then 24 now, of course, we have a huge amount of teams, and of course from Australia, a big continent from Australia, as you know.
And then so going back to a little bit on the history, because you are here since the beginning of floorball here. So what are the trends that you have observed? What are the changes along the way that you have observed? Yeah.
How much time do we have? No.
As long as you have.
Yeah. No. I mean, there's been incredible changes from that. We actually, people now look at OTH. It used to be Tampines. It was a badminton hall without any aircon, and all the way at the end of that that hall we managed to get so that we could book it like 4 badminton courts, and that was where the league was held back then. It was very tough getting courts. National team, I coached a national team for a very long time, and I look at what they have now, and I wonder, if I had that back then. You can ask my players, but we were extremely fit, because there's no excuse for not being fit, I feel, when you're playing on the national team. But we used tennis courts, we used basketball courts for tactical trainings. I'm a strong believer in incorporating other sports into it, and basketball is, of course, defensively without the ball and with the ball. There's so many similarities. Me also from a ice hockey background, so I incorporate a little bit of that too when it comes to tactics. It has changed tremendously on that side. The youth setup now seems to be much better. I mean, now we have an under-19 team that did really well. The girls team created history, I believe, and they
11th.
Yeah, 11th, which is amazing, especially on the girls' side. That's great, because I think you're having a little bit of a generation shift change on the latest team with some of the older players retiring. So it's great to see that you have so much talent coming through, hopefully. Talent-wise, school-wise, I mean, now you even have DSA to go to your favorite school. That was non-existent back then when we started it. Parents said, "What are you talking about? You're not playing floorball. You're going to study." And now it's not the other way around. That's wrong.
It's still pretty much like
it is. But parents actually, they hire personal individual coaches to try to get their kid to actually get into perhaps one of the better schools. So it's interesting to see that. It's vital in many ways due to the fact that you have our neighboring countries and the top countries, so Philippines and Thailand, who are sourcing for players that are actually playing overseas that has dual citizenship or passport. So it's vital for us that we don't have that in that sense, but we have a very good, in-house school system / coaching setup in that sense. We can always discuss the coaching and what's happening on that side. I still feel, and I'll take this to heart, my team that I took to Czech Republic, and we created history back then. We also came 11th, and we beat European countries for the first time. Would beat the current national team by 5-10 goals, I think. And that's based on not just skills. I mean, skills today, they have great skills, but we were a team, and everyone knew what to do, and I might be biased. I don't know. I have some of my players that probably, hopefully, agree with me, but maybe we should have a game against each other. But no, I think that there's talent is one thing, skills is one thing, but then you got to incorporate it into a winning formula, and that's where hopefully we can come, because they are going to get better. They're going to find more players overseas, so we have to get better here also on all levels to stand a chance to continue.
So are there key areas that you think that we can particularly work on? Because like I said, dual citizenship, and because they have players already playing there at maybe even in the lower SSL leagues and whatnot, and us being pretty much like still stuck in Asia. How do you think are the steps that we can do to, because Philippines, Thailand, they all run past us already. How do we try to catch back to them?
Well, firstly, I still feel that we can beat those teams today, and we could beat them. I see what you mean, and they are. I would say that, and we have. That's why we have our summer camp that we just had last weekend, where we bring in coaches as well as European players to try to get them to actually enforce more of this. And they say the same thing as I do, that skill-wise, if you look at a Singaporean today, skill-wise and shooting just without opponents, warm-up, as well as Europeans, shoot super hard, all this. Take that Singaporean into a game, and you have a different situation sometimes where they understanding of the game. That's what we're talking about. If you have a hard shot, great. But if it takes too long to shoot, the goalkeeper will be ready or a defender will be ready. And it doesn't matter how hard you shoot, it's never going to go through someone's leg.
Yes.
So knowing when to shoot a hard shot, knowing when to shoot a quicker shot. So instead of a slap shot perhaps, or the drag that, or sweep that everyone loves to do nowadays, where you take it behind your back and you try to shoot, it takes much, much longer to shoot. Knowing when to do that and when to actually release a quick shot. That's a big difference between the top nations and us. Knowing when to not shoot and fake the shot and perhaps take a few steps to one side. And it goes back to understanding of the game. It goes back to tactical. I feel tactically we should be able to be at least on par with all the other nations. Skill-wise, I might say something that people disagree with. I still feel that we have more talent in Thailand, for instance. We have more speed, but it's again goes back to, do we utilize it? Can we utilize it? And if we can, I think we're going to be successful. And I have no doubt that we can beat both Philippines and Thailand if we do that. But you are also correct that they are looking and will find more and more of these type of players from other nations, and that gives it. It's a big challenge, no doubt.
But not just that, because if you're looking at Australia, because Australia just beat us to the third World Cup spot, and they don't have that same thing with the Philippines and Thailand. So it's also why are we? Do you notice based on your observations? What can we do to not let Australia continue to lap us again?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not bragging or anything, but I never lost to Australia as a Singaporean coach in qualifications. We used to beat them. Then they became much better. They're actually, I would agree with you that they were really good for a few years, Australia, really good. And then some of them started to retire. They do have, though, at least 4 players that are playing in Europe. They have the brothers, the Gardner brothers, that are playing in Czech Republic in the top league. They have 2. They have a Swedish, I think they have a goalkeeper that is playing in SSL. He may not be the first goalie, but he's still playing in SSL, which is pretty good. And they have a player that used to play in SSL. So they have those players with that kind of experience. Now, if you go back to the qualification, they scored a lot of the goals for Australia, but they also conceded a lot of goals. It was close. The last game was 4-3, right? Aussies are interesting because they have this also mentality that perhaps is something that we have to work on a little bit. That they never give up, and they're never worried even when they're down, because they just believe in what they do, and they just keep on going like a machine almost. I've seen it many times. It's interesting. It used to be when I played in the league, which is a long time ago here in Division 1, schools innebandy who of course still exist, but back then it was a different team. But they were also this interesting team that totally believed in everything they did. They had some really unorthodox player, really good players. They had 2 brothers that are legends that I hope that young players actually can somehow see. And unfortunately, we don't have so much maybe videotape from that. But they were great. Sean, one of the players from Nemesis, Sean Hung, outstanding player, played on the national team with me. But they also had this, that they could be down 3, 4, 5 goals, and they just still came back and won most games. And they had this belief, this strong belief that even if everything doesn't go great, they still will continue with what they do. And they had that. It's almost like the Man United under Ferguson.
Yes, yes.
They how many times did they score in the last minute?
Time.
Exactly. And it's like they have a belief and they just stick to it. And Aussies are similar in that sense. And then they also have really good coaches. They have coaches from Finland that comes in. They train a lot of small things that they can use in games when it's even. If let's say it's 3-3, there might be a power play this way that they have practiced something that surprises the other team, free hits, etc. They are well prepared, and in the even games, that matters a lot more than perhaps in games where if you're up by 12, it doesn't really matter, right? But 3-3, it comes down to what you have trained tactically, defensively, and minimizing mistakes. And you cannot be successful in floorball unless you have a good defense and a goalkeeper. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, and this one, I think we can chalk it down to how Wonder Sticks won last season with J-Paul and Fariza back at goal. They were phenomenal. And but you did mention the style of play. Like schools had a particular style of play.
Yeah.
So what other teams that you have seen
in the league?
Yeah, in the league that gave you that, wow, this team is interesting.
It's I haven't religiously watched the league.
But over the years.
In general, well, I mean, you have Innebandy has now I like the new guys at Innebandy, all the new talent that came through. Some left and some are still there, and some of the older guys left, unfortunately. I thought that they could have won it this year because that was the year when they had the young line and then a little bit.
Yeah,
I'm older than them, guys, so when I say old, it's kind of ridiculous. But the older, more experienced line, and but they had a. Yeah, they didn't manage to win that semi-final there against, I believe, Nemesis, right? Then when it comes to Wonder Sticks and Orions, it wasn't Orions last year, but in that semi-final it was interesting because I had a video. I actually had a video where I predicted the score, and it was so funny because I thought the first game, actually the first and second game, I thought Wonder Sticks were actually better, but. And the second game, Dahlgren, I believe it was then, right? Yeah. Dahlgren won, even though I felt like Wonder Six should have won that one. The last game, it was a complete dominance from Dahlgren and Wonder Six. They were extremely lucky in that game. Also, the goalkeeper was amazing, but it also came down to shocking misses from Dahlgren in that game. But in general, I like some of the newer teams that are coming through. I like Skyhawks. I like Tampines. And the reason why is that I like these teams that are building from scratch almost, right? And from the bottom up. And hopefully they won't get. I mean, I know that they are losing players every year to these dragons that are coming. They're poaching their best players, which is a shame in some ways. I understand that part too, because as a player, if you're a young player, you want to play
in a good team. You want to play the best.
Yeah, but looking at how they play, not just them. I mean, in general, some of those newer teams are doing great, and I think they should hopefully get more notice because of that. So then you have the teams like Wonder Six and Nemesis that are, Orion's kind of like the whole team went over. But if you look at Wonder Six and Nemesis, they have a lot of new players. They poach a lot of players, and that's fine too. I know that's the
reality of how
that's reality, and it's all about other teams trying to stop that. But on the girls' side, it seems like it's two teams. It's Titans and Wonder Six, and I saw a little bit of that game. It was a very exciting game, and that's a game that can go either way actually. So I think that they will probably have an exciting, maybe a final, again a repeat final, when the league at the closure of the league. On the guys' side, honestly, I feel depending on what team, some of the ones that are flying in players for every game. Depending on that, I feel it's like a toss-up between maybe four teams.
Yeah. And okay, but so I think that it's a good thing that there are foreign players coming in to play in the league, so that we can let our players go and expose themselves to the different levels.
Yep.
So, what do you think about this kind of, because SSL is kind of like the same because they have players from Finland and everyone joining.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about how do we go and improve that standard of our league? So that is one way. What else do you think would be nice to do?
I think it's great that we have players come. Actually the Singapore League is getting that attractive that players are coming in from not just Asia, maybe even from Europe. That's great, and that hopefully will improve the standard in general of the league. When it comes to us, I'm a strong believer of youth development, and if when you have youth development the way we have, which is really good now, you have to have coaches that are also at that level.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be great to have more exchanges with coaches from European nations, not necessarily from any specific country. It could be any country. And the same, of course, for referees, which is another thing where referees, they get a lot of crap during games. There's probably a few referees, if they hear this, that are going to say, I was part of that when I was coaching, because I could get frustrated sometimes on referees. But then I told a referee, I'm not going to name the person, but I had to referee one time in S02E Open, and it was the first time I ever refereed. And I realized after that I'm going to probably not complain because it is so difficult. And the problem you have is that if without referees, you can't have games.
Yeah.
So you have, for the players to develop, you have to have good referees that are developing too, and vice versa. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So I think a lot of exchanges where not just sitting in front of a whiteboard or a projector where do this, to actually incorporate them into real situations. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to get SFA to have not just local referees. As you can see, we have referees from, I think, Indonesia, Philippines, and that's great because we have to develop everything, not just one part, for us to be successful. And referees is super important, I feel, also. Coaches, I just hope that they could get more, they can open their eyes a little bit perhaps more and see other influences, not just from, like, what made me, what I loved about summer camp, for instance, was that we had, or our clinics this year, is that I saw clinics conducted by Swedes, Swiss, and Finns. And it's very, very different the way they conduct clinics. And that was very interesting to me to see that you shouldn't even say Europeans, because all, and especially the top four nations, and Czech Republic also included, are so different in the way they coach also. So by having that, it was very interesting to see. It's very interesting to see the teams here. If you were here during the All-Star game against, you saw the Finnish line, how they played compared to perhaps the Swedish line. There's big differences, and then the Swiss line came in. And that would be great for coaches to get that experience. I mean, now we're talking in a perfect world. There's, of course, a financial aspect to that. But if they could go perhaps over to Europe for not just 2-3 days, maybe they could stay at one club for like a month, understanding how the setup is, how the youth is working, how everything around it that we can bring back. And then, of course, you can't incorporate everything, but perhaps you could incorporate some things into how we do it here. And that, I think, would be beneficial. For
because it does kind of lead me to think, like, if we have training camps for the players, why not we have training camps for the coaches? I
agree. And it's something that we are aiming to do, actually for referees too. So the best, in a perfect world, we would have a refereeing course at the same time as S02E Open. So you do the theory, and then you have the actual practical right there. And then you can have meetings perhaps with the referee afterwards, and we can go through the videos, what you could have done or what you did well, etc. And it could be the same for coaches. And these are vital things, especially because I think you agree with me on that we need to get that incorporated now. Otherwise, our neighboring nations are gonna, that ship is slowly sailing out, and we gotta, catch on before it goes too far out in that sense. So, there's so many things that we can do. I mean, Singapore, it's tremendous if you look at Singapore, what we can do. I mean, we have a junior college final, A-Div, and it's packed. I guarantee you can't find that anywhere else in the world. Secondary, B division. I mean, it's just amazing, the interest, and we have all that, which is really special. And then we just have to add in these things that perhaps we've been discussing now today also.
It's the coaches, how we bring that interest from students and getting them into proper professional football.
Sure. Yeah.
But that also means how do we get to see all these other influencers? Because from what I understand, it's not easy to get access to all the foreign games to watch.
Yeah, I think you have to pay for it, of course. I think a lot of people do, believe it or not, because when I meet floorball, local floorball, they know more about Swedish players than I do, honestly. They this guy. I have no idea who that is, but I just okay, So the interest is no doubt right there, and I don't know how they do it, but they watch. The problem is, of course, it's 6 hours or 7 hours time difference also, so it's in the middle of the night. But I know that a lot of locals watch it. The problem is, do they understand it? Just watching it, do they watch just because they see a fancy shot from a player or a fancy dribble? Or do they actually look at, how are they moving without the ball? What are they doing here? When they get a counterattack, how important is that first pass that I always talked about? That when you have a counterattack, that first pass into the offensive transition, if that's a bad pass, you have to slow down. That's the end of the offensive transition. You've seen it many times from Asian teams here where they have a golden opportunity against the All-Stars, Orions. And that first pass is bad, slows everything down, they get back and they take the ball. Europeans are so good at that first perfect pass out of a situation.
And it's not just the first pass, it's also that second pass.
And the last pass.
They already know where the ball is going to go even before the move starts.
Exactly. But it's also because they move before they get the pass. Another thing we have is that the movement without the ball is so important in floorball, actually in all sports. Again, I reference back to basketball when they always try to get a player open. How do they do that? By moving and by isolating or by doing something to get someone open. And very seldom that you just get open standing still with the ball, right? So you have to be able to move. And that's something that I feel that we can get better at. Technically, I'm telling you, the Singaporeans, they shoot very good shot. Very skill-wise, they can do stuff with the ball. It's very impressive. It's just about how do you incorporate it into a game to it to be efficient.
Game sense. How do you teach game sense?
Yeah, that's not easy. But it is the coach's responsibility to be able to do that, and the tactics, knowing how to defend, not blocking. You see a lot of silly mistakes here where a defender is blocking the body rather than the blade where the shot is. So the shot will go through because I'm blocking your body. And not only does the shot go through, but I'm also blocking my goalkeeper because of it. Instead of actually, it's the blade you should block rather than the body. Small things like that. And I did that when I coached TP a long time ago. And they whined about it because we were I stopped. We did it again and again, and in repetition. I'm a firm believer in repetition because you have to have a ground, a specific knowledge before I can let you freestyle, if you will.
Yeah.
You have to know how to run, where to run a little bit, but then after that, I leave it totally up to you. If
The
you can prove.
defense is really about repetition.
It is.
Yeah.
Attacking too, actually. Combinations. It is a lot of repetition. I think another important thing always that I saw is that you have to try to get lines to click as fast as possible. And then when you click, usually it's not about getting the 5 best players in a line. It's about getting the 5 players that work best together in a line. And that could be one player that is very bigger size perhaps, or one player that is just running a lot of running and opens up space for the playmaker, for instance, or something like that. Or you have one very offensive defender. Should you pair him with another offensive defender? Probably not, because you need someone that actually helps out a little bit in defense. So there's a lot of things that goes, and it goes back again to the coaches, of course.
Yeah, and it's just that how do we help the coaches get that? Yeah, and get access to all these. Because realities means that we don't really get the chance to go in overseas to do all these things.
Yeah.
So there's always this. It's always this. We try to see if we can. Is there a way to just do it in such a way that we don't need to go overseas to go and. Yeah.
Well, this is one way. SG Open is one way to do it, and there are many things we can perhaps continue to work together with SFA and together with SFA has been tremendously supportive of this event in every way. So that's great. And how can we?
Yeah.
Because at the end of it, we're actually all doing this to improve the standard, not just in Singapore. In
Asia,
all over Asia,
all over the world.
And that's why we're trying to bring these teams in there and awareness and how to improve and I think that is one way. The other way would be to have other types of exchanges, but how that I don't know. But it has to work in the schedule and all that. But you also have to have coaches that are willing to embrace it. If you don't have coaches that are willing to embrace it, it's never going to work. Kind of like a player. If you're telling a player to not do something and they refuse and they continue doing the same thing, it's going to be kind of difficult. And it's the same with coaches. You got to be open to this. As a coach, you have to realize that no one is perfect. And you're never fully taught. There's always new things happening. Floorball is such a young sport.
It is.
It's constantly developing. The way teams play now, if you look at some Swedish teams, for instance, they more or less have brought down a center or a forward to become a defender. But the way they play with the ball is that they just attack with that player, to have that 4th player coming up, so that to trick the other team, so that they have a very, very offensive player to open up for that 4th player. The backside of that, of course, is if you lose the ball, that
you have one last man.
Yeah, that one. So depending on how you play, if you are a controlling play, like for instance, if Nokian here plays against, not India, but if they play against a local team, Nokian knows that they're going to control the ball for the majority of the game, and they can try to go much, much higher up with probably their one defender, for instance, and they can have a lot of position changes to try to trick and confuse that opponent team. And that's what you see. You saw it now with Western Exports against Malaya Tigers. Yeah. All Western Exports shots and goals were in the slot.
Yeah.
And it was because they had a position change and they confused the Malayans so much that they lost. They didn't know, am I supposed to cover that player or is that supposed to? And then he's open. Simple. It looks good, it looks wow, but it's actually very, very simple, and I guarantee you it's something they have trained.
Yeah.
So it goes back to the coach again, something that the coach has implemented, and then at the right time, it looks perfect.
Yeah. So the opportunities like this really does help.
Yeah.
And I always thought that this is one of those like in between. It's kind of like the cup tournament kind of thing. So in the EPL, you have the league, and then there's the FA Cup running on the side.
Sure.
So this is kind of like that. Yeah. But then I also always kind of wish that we would be able to do things like the Champions League.
Yeah.
kind of thing. So that,
Yeah.
but then it's always come down to cost because the teams really
Sure.
don't want to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something we thought of too. We we thought of having the champions of like Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, etc.
Yeah.
play somewhere. But for Australia to come here,
It's
it's far.
Yeah.
Malaysia, no problem. They take a bus and they're here in 4 hours.
10,
But
10 minutes even.
yeah, it's
JB.
after JB. Yeah, correct. So there are those, but again, if you look at Australia, I'm so impressed by how well they played due to the fact that even for them to go from one side of Australia to the other
Yeah.
is insanely long. It's
Close
like
to Melbourne.
5 hours or something.
Yeah.
So that they. Of course, Western Australia that's where most floorball is played. But I mean, it's played in Melbourne, it's played in Sydney, I believe, and all that. So if it explodes in Australia, then we might have trouble. Yeah, problems here.
Oh yeah. It's just a when.
Yeah, exactly. But looking at the Japanese team here, Blue Ninja,
yeah.
I don't know if you've seen them, but oh my goodness, they are really talented. And the interesting thing is, not a single one of on that team was on the national team now that played in the qualification, which to me is mind-blowing because they are way better than some of the players that actually played for Japan in that tournament. So I'm not sure how that can happen. They have 2 players that are really good. So, and they have 1 player that plays also in Nokian in this tournament who is doing really well. Ken Singh, I believe his name is. So. Yeah, the Japanese are and on the girls' side, they are easily the best team in Asia at the moment.
Yeah. So, actually, this is very, very good to have you here to talk about the Asia Open and also a little bit more about the issue of floorball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't offend anyone in any way, but that. I think it's great, and what you do is great too. I mean, I think not just locals here, but in general, floorball fans, whether you're a player, coach, parent, or just a fan, are starving for more things like this. Yeah, so it's great. So yeah,
thanks.
I really appreciate you inviting me for this.
No, it's good to have you. It's good to have you.